Hello everyone, it is I, the silly one, back for another little bit of a recording stream, call it what you want. It's been a while, things have been busy, lots have been going on, and I haven't been able to say anything about any of it. So I'm going to just do a short little one here today and look at the mulligan, as there have been a number of discussions about it. Someone volunteered something and then everyone wants as many mulligans as they want. And is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? So let's recap on the mulligan rules that most people use. And most people use or play with the DCI rules. Let me get rid of that and get that out of the way. Sorry, that was a hangover from a Mitch game. So in the DCI rules, I'm just using the Discord. Section 2.7 is the DCI rules, and I'm referring to 1.3.17, the mulligan. Sounds like somebody's thesis, doesn't it? Okie dokie. So the mulligan rules state, here we go, sorry about that. The mulligan rules state, right, before each battle begins, the player going first, however you decided that, so you should roll dice before you draw cards or anything else to see who goes first. Whether you follow that the official way, the Chester way, or whichever way it is, as long as you're both happy, you decide who goes first, flip a coin, whatever. Okay. Player going first may decide to take a mulligan, reshuffle the stockpile and draw a new hand of cards if his or her initial hand of 5 cards does not contain at least one basic resource. So the only thing that really matters here is, have you got a basic resource or not? Remember that basic resources are A, L, M, P, and T. They do not include war funds, field construction sites, anything that Merchant Cast wants to play with, think tanks, or anything else, black market connections, which I always seem to draw in Lackey. Basic resource, not a fancy one, just a normal A, L, M, P, or T. If the player going first does not wish to take a mulligan, the player going second then has the same option, whether they take a mulligan or not, but only and only if they do not have a basic resource. You can't just look at your hand and say, do you know what, that's a bit naff, I'll have another go. And that's slightly different to some other games. Some games let you mulligan regardless, or discard some of your hand, all of your hand, part of your hand, and redraw, whatever. Okay, BattleTech rules have been like this since the start, and they haven't changed, or at least up until this point. So, whoever goes first, have you got basic resource? Yes, no. And then that turn passes to the second person. If either player chooses to take a mulligan, their opponent has the option to ride on the back of or take that mulligan. So if player 1 takes a mulligan, player 2 can use that mulligan that's been taken by player 1 to redraw and shuffle their hand. Okay. Then at that point, turn passes to player 2. They have their own mulligan, which they can use at this point, and redraw their hand. And player 1 can also piggyback that and take it. So effectively, there are your initial hand, your mulligan, and your opponent's mulligan. So there you've got 3 chances to draw. Note that taking your opponent's mulligan is purely optional and down to whether they decide to take one or not. Probably if your decks are reasonable, then if they take one out, if player 2 takes player 1's mulligan, there's a good chance that they won't take their mulligan because they've probably got, or they've had 2 goes at drawing a decent hand. Okay. And then the final line says each player is allowed 1 mulligan per battle, but reshuffling when an opponent declares a mulligan does not count. So using your opponent's mulligan doesn't count to that limit. And per battle means each, effectively per battle, 3 battles in a game. So you can do that once when you draw. And that's been pretty clear and pretty constant for quite a while. And then somebody came up, I don't like that. And at this point I'm thinking, why don't you like that? I mean, that seems pretty fair to me. We've always played that way. It doesn't matter how well you design your deck. You are always at the whim of the RNG gods. BattleTech does it, other games do it. There has to be an element of RNG in here somewhere. Okay. The other method is obviously, well, we've got draw and shuffle, and the other one in BattleTech is die roll. You have no idea what the outcome is. Their variants. That's why some people don't like die rolls, because their dice hate them. They don't have dice karma. Call it what you want, or things just don't work when you want them to. That's the nature of luck of the draw. And if you don't accept that, then it's going to be a pretty boring game. If you don't have the variance, it's a pretty boring game. If you don't have some random element in there, it's a pretty boring game, because everyone knows what's going to happen. Players will load hands and play things out in order and whatever else. So without that random element, every game becomes the same thing, and that's we get bored with that, and that's not what we want. We like the challenge of BattleTech. We like the strategic elements of it. We like to see what our opponents are deploying, and therefore how are we going to react to the situation? How can we react to the situation with the cards in our hand? So you've got to have some sort of variability in there. Okay. So people said they didn't like this, and they wanted a simple rule. So what they did was basically say, okay, you can have 2 mulligans. Okay, you can draw your initial hand, you can mulligan it away and draw another hand, and you can mulligan it away and draw a third. Okay. And they said, oh, that's great, you know, I like that, I've got my reliability and whatever else. But is it actually that good? Is it actually that fair? And I know in other games that if you take another mulligan, you have 1 less card in your hand, and so on, given the amount of mulligans that you have. To have 5 mulligans and end up with 1 card in your hand, or something stupid like that. It's possible. Yes, that's those games. That rule is designed for those games with those different mechanics and those different random elements. In BattleTech, it's been this way. Have a mulligan, you can take your opponents, have your own mulligan, they can take yours, done, dusted, and what you get is what you end up with, and that's part of the challenge. Okay, and in doing that, that always gives any deck a chance, albeit a small one, against any other deck. Because we can all resource screw, we can all mech screw. I've never had a hand that's fully missions at the start, but then maybe I don't play that many missions. But the point is that random element of draw is part of it. It's part of the game. That's one of the ways that games can be over, especially in tournaments. I mean, a tournament game should be 1 hour and 10 minutes for 3 games. And I know some people that say, I can't even play 1 game in 1 hour and 10 minutes. Well, if the other guy mulligans or resource screws or mech screws, then fine, it's an easy win. Likewise, if you do the same, it's an easy win. And that's how you can get those games in that period of time. But if you don't, you end up with stalemates and all the other things. So I think you have to accept that mech screw or resource screw is part of the game. And that's very true of any other game. I mean, Magic is the obvious one. Mana screw. You know, if you're playing a 2-coloured deck, and you know you're playing blue-red, control fireball or whatever else it is, and you've got a handful of blue counter spells, and you're already drawing red mana. Part of the game. It's all down to your deck design, what you put in, numbers, and how you create it. Okay, and the random element is done with the shuffle and whatever else. That's part of everything is. Otherwise, you might as well just stack your deck and say, right, I'm drawing one of these, one of these, one of these, one of these in this order, and then everything works perfectly. So from that point of view, accepting that things aren't perfect and don't always go perfectly well is something for you to consider. And as I said, you have to accept it. I've lost games on bad draws. It happens. You know, you cannot win every game. You accept that as well. You know, some people just play for fun. And if you play for fun, you can play whatever mulligan rule you want. Okay. So, is 2 mulligans good or bad? I am going to come out categorically and say it's bad. Okay? I don't see what's wrong with this. This seems particularly fair for me. You build your decks to this. You know how many resources you're going to put in there. You put your mechs in accordingly. You do your development curve. You do your missions and your plan and whatever else. And accept that sometimes it just doesn't go to plan. That's life. Jesus, you know, I can brush my teeth in the morning or plan to brush my teeth in the morning, and that does not go to plan for a number of reasons. Cats, kittens, wives, daughters, cars, anything. I accept that things don't go to plan. So from that point of view, yes, it's soul destroying if you happen to do it twice. But accept that, you know, a bad draw happens to everybody. You know. We see the lucky draws. Chester never draws in the right units. I always draw black market early. It's just how it is, you know. But you have to accept that. And if you don't accept that, then you're into the Billy Johnny power gamey combo-y type thing and whatever else. Or it's not going to happen, is it? So double mulligan for me is bad, and I'm surprised that somebody hasn't done the science on this beforehand. Yes, I watched The Martian at the weekend, and one of the phrases that I always remember that is Matt Damon saying, "I'm going to science the shit out of this." So it's not quite sciencing the shit out of it, but we'll do a little bit of maths, and let's just zoom this up a little. Where are we? Let's just have a look at this. So this is just. Let's just take that down a touch. This is just a combi draw calculator put into a table. It uses the and I can never remember it. There's a hypo something or other card draw. Something or other. There's a Magic the Gathering. Hypergeometric calculator. Yes, sorry. I always call it the hypoallergenic thing, which is something completely different and not good for your skin. Okie dokie. So, to understand this little table, down the left-hand side, I have put the number of basic supports. And remember, with a BattleTech mulligan, all we are looking for is basic supports. It doesn't matter if you have 5 of them or 1 of them, and what else is in your hand. If you've got a basic support, you can't take a mulligan. So you're looking for situations where you do not have a basic support. Rest of the deck content is effectively irrelevant. Okay, so most people, I would say, start with 18 basic supports. You know, if you do 18 basic supports, put a couple of war funds in, probably 4 wild funds and 2 black market connections, you got yourself a pretty reliable deck. And if you're starting out, start there. Okay, people will start and cut a few down and add a Solaris context here and add a think tank there and tweak and do whatever they want to do. Fine. But if you're starting out, start out with 18 basic supports. Okay, 2 black market, 4 war funds, you're good to go. Okay, why do you do that? Well, on a normal draw, you will have a hand that has one of those 18 basic resources 84% of the time. So that's pretty reliable. Okay, if you said to somebody, you know, that, you know, 84% of the time you're going to have a perfect meal, or you're going to have an amazing pint of lager or something like that, or 84% of the time you will roll high or whatever else it is, most people will be very happy with that. Okay, that means that 16% of the time you're going to fail. Okay, now if we change that and have 1 mulligan on 18 resources and have 1 mulligan, so draw 5 cards, no basic resource, you take your mulligan, you draw 5 more cards again, and one of those basic resources, one of those second draw basic resources is going to happen 97% of the time. Okay, so on 1 mulligan with 18 basic resources in your deck is going to go on the first turn and have a basic resource 97.44% of the time. That's pretty reliable, yeah. Okay, there are human factors in there, there are random, there are RNG, there's how you shuffle, there's which way the wind blows, and what you had for tea the night before, and all those other factors in there. Okay. So that second draw, sorry, the first mulligan, the second draw, increases your chances of getting a basic resource by about 13%. Okie dokie. So that's pretty good. That's pretty reliable. Okay. So you're saying that 8% of the 80% of the time, 84% of the time, my deck works. So if you think of a tournament, okay. So a tournament is normally 6 rounds of Swiss, a quarter-final, a semi-final, and a final. And the final is normally 5 games if you're... Oh my God. Yes, the little monster has appeared. This has been the bane of my life for a little while. Smile, mate, you're on candid camera. Go and be good. Thank you. Right, so where were we? 84% of the time. Okay, so 6 round of Swiss, that's 3 games, so that's 18, and then a quarter final and a semi-final, so there's another 5 games, gets us to 23, and 5 more games for a final, so that could be a maximum of 28 games. That's if every game you play or you win is 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and then the semi and quarter finals are 2-1, 2-1, and the final is a 3-2. Unlikely to happen. There's likely to be a couple of 2-0s in there, so you're probably looking at about 20 games in a full tournament. And we'll just use that because it's a nice, easy number. So 84% of the time means that your deck will work straight out of the box 17 in 20. And that's nice and reliable. And I think if most people said you would consider taking that. Okay. If you then put your mulligan in, and you're up to 97%, then basically it's going to work 19 in 20. Okay, so that's pretty reliable. You're going to lose 1 game, probably lose. You never know. Your opponent could do the same. That's the other factor that no one thinks about. It's all right, I'm worried about my draw. Well, what about everyone else's? I can have a crap draw. They can have a crap draw. That makes the game just as interesting as you both having a perfect draw or a really good draw. So you accept that 1 game in the tournament, I'm going to draw and get no resources. It happens. Happened to me in the British Nationals. The 1 game I needed to win is the 1 game I didn't draw. But that's life. That's how it works. That's a random thing in it. You know. Okay. So that's nice and easy with 18 resources. And what we said is after 1 mulligan it goes to 97. Now if you add 2 mulligans into that, it goes to 99.59, 99.6. And that's bonkers. Yeah. So just changing the 1 mulligan rule to 2 mulligans, you have just upped that to a deck that is reliable as hell. You probably couldn't get much higher than that unless you decided to put a deck of 59 resource cards in and 1 other. 59 basic resource cards in and 1 other. It would probably not achieve anything close to that. So yes. Adding the second mulligan increases the deck reliability drastically. Okay, and you might look at this and think, oh, it's only a few percent. But it's that few percent that make the difference. Okay, we saw how here this went from 17 in 20 to 19 in 20 to being practically 20 in 20. And that's on 18 basic resources. Now, when you start and slim the deck down, and we're going to go to 14 basic resources now. 14 basic resources is the limit. I would not go lower than this without a very, very good reason. Okay, and most people don't. They go with the 14 basic resources and lots of other weird shit to go with it. War funds and field construction sites and think tanks coming out of the yazoo. And some of the tactics cards, which are just bonkers beyond belief. 14 basic resources means that you will want to mulligan 3 and 4, or 1 25% of the time. Your deck will be a reliable 3 and 4, and then you will want to mulligan on the 4th one. Okay. Now the thing here is that if you mulligan, that goes up. That gets you to 93.75% chance of having a resource in your hand after the first mulligan. Okay, which is pretty good, you know. That's 93%, so that's 18 out of 20. Okay, so that's playable. Obviously, this is a lot worse. Where are we? 5. So this is 15 and 20, getting up to 18 and 20. So that's 3 extra chances. But if you add a second mulligan, that goes to 98.44%. So all of a sudden, with 14 basic resources in your deck, your reliability is just as good, pretty much, as having 18 if you double mulligan, because your chances are increasing because you've got 2 mulligans. Okay. So this is the 2 mulligan rule, where you take 2 mulligans regardless, sod your opponent. So this is the proposed rule. And this is why I think it's bad, because this allows you to run less and less resources and add more other shit in, whatever that shit might be. Okay. So at this point you can see that if you go with double mulligan, 14 basic resources makes your deck as good as if there are 18 basic resources when it comes to actually drawing one to start with. Okay, and I think that's bad, because what you are looking at here is you are looking at people that are taking things to the extreme, and in order to do that are starting to change rules. Now the DCI rules have been around for a long time, and I've never seen anyone change them to the extent of double mulliganing. I suppose with anything, with any tournament, if you give enough advance notice of what's going on, then that's fine. There's a dangerous ground here about, because this was used at the World Championships. I'm not sure about the use of the world there. They were never advertised as that, or at least at the start. And it's like American football. It's the World Series, yeah, but you're the only people playing it. So how can it be a World Series? And I would have thought that if that was the case, you would have just kept things very, very normal in that respect. And I think what happened there is that maybe 1 or 2 people didn't realise the outcome of that change. And you could argue that somebody or people that exploited this by maybe dropping a resource for another card gained an advantage. Yes, they did, but that was because they followed or looked at the rules and adjusted accordingly. Maybe some people didn't. That's pure speculation on my part, and that's no slight on anybody that played in the tournament, won in the games, or played in any of the games. Obviously, there's having a good draw, and then you've still got to play what goes on, and therefore credit to the people that played it. But from my perspective, I don't think that double mulliganing works very well. Here's the more extreme example: 12 basic resources, 68%. You know, you're looking at 13 or 14 out of 20. After 1 mulligan, that goes up to 17, 18. And then if you double mulligan, it's definitely up to 19. And that is ridiculously low. 12 basic supports. That's probably played by people who played their first ever game using one of the starters, one of the unlimited starters, and they've only got like 3 assembly, 3 munitions, 3 politics. Sorry, they only put 2 politics in just because, and 3 tactics. Probably 3A, 3M, 3 tactics, and 3 logistics. And they put 5 Daisy primes and Vulture primes and all that kind of stuff in. It was the first deck we all built with minimum resources, every mission under the sun, and the biggest mechs you can find. And then they wonder why they resource screw. And of course, the other thing that never happened at that point is you didn't have access to war funds, which increases the reliability of your deck quite drastically. All you need with a war funds is 1 basic resource to pay for it. And then you can see all of a sudden where this goes crazy, where you can 98% of the time on a double mulligan pull a basic resource and then war funds for what you don't need and you're away. So yes, the numbers go down. Excuse me, too many fingers. The numbers go down obviously as your supports go down, but what you find is that these numbers here after the second mulligan, how often your deck works with a double mulligan, start at 96.7%. So 97% of the time you are good, all the way up to practically 100. Okay, whereas if you are on a single mulligan rule, you're into the 90s, and people that are looking for performance and reliability don't go there. Yeah. I always remember talking to Barry Young about it. Barry had he wrote a little calculator for it in Visual Basic, and basically his conclusion was you don't want to go lower than 14 basic resources. That's right on the limit because of these numbers here. So one final story about why variance is good. The last world champion, alright, maybe that's not quite true now, depending on whether you go for the American World Series or not, but Knight's End with his little Dragonfly deck, which I reviewed a little while ago, and it was a decent enough deck, but it wasn't as good as it could be by a long chalk, won 2 games against the Star League. The broken Hasty Alliance Star League deck that power players like to play and whatever else, and people think are theirs, but it's been around a while. Okay, so he beat that deck, and how did he beat it? He didn't beat it by trying to put Dragonfly out on turn 3, because we know with the Star League deck he could have been screwed before then anyway. He beat it because the Star League deck ran 12 basic resources and double mulliganed twice. So that's what I mean about there always has to be a little bit of variance and a little bit of hope so that any deck can beat any other deck. And we all know the Star League deck is busted beyond belief, and whatever else. And the Dragonfly deck is reasonably nice performing in whatever you want to say. So if you just make things too reliable, you might as well just say, do you know what? I'm going to pick my starting hand. I want to pick my starting hand, and I want that unit and that unit and that mission and that command and a basic resource, and I'm going to play them out in that order. If you're going to go to that extreme, because of that. So, double mulligan, no, in my opinion. Do not do the double mulligan rule unless you want to give somebody who's running really light a really good reliability on their deck, which, you know, let's face it, if you're running 18 basic resources, the difference between a single mulligan and a double mulligan is negligible. It's 2%. So it's only going to affect 1 in 50 games. Whereas some of the other decks, it's going to be a lot more significant. So you know, they shouldn't have the opportunity. I would probably go as far as saying I would very, very strongly consider whether I would play in a tournament that had a double mulligan rule because of it. It takes the variance out of the game and therefore some of the fun, in my opinion. I think the single mulligan rule is fine, and remember that you can get a second mulligan, which might put you into that end category, but that's not guaranteed, and that's down to the whim and wills of your opponent. And there you go. My final story when it comes to mulligans is I had a student that took an exam and they scored 97%. Great performance. And were they happy with 97%? No, they were not happy with 97%, to the extent they said, I wanted to resit the exam. I would have been happy with 97%, I must admit. Okay. Reset the exam, and they got 82. What a waste of time. What a waste of time. Be happy with 97%. Hell, I'd be happy in something math. If it was a maths exam, I'd be happy with 82. I'd probably be happy with 50. But you get the idea, you know. Be happy with what you've got sometimes, and don't get greedy. And this is kind of a greedy strategy in my viewpoint. So, good or bad, 1 mulligan, fine. 2 mulligans, no. There you go. That's my opinion. All right. It is an opinion. You may disagree with it. You are entitled to disagree with it. That is your right. But there we go. So anyway, thank you thank you for listening for me throw numbers around and have a good rant for about half an hour or so. I hope that kind of clears things up. If you want access to the table or you want to take a screenshot of it, then let me know or what have you. Yeah, enjoy it, but beware double mulligan things, especially if anyone asks you, we're going to play double mulligan. No, don't go there, in my opinion. They'd probably streamline their deck for that. They've probably used it to squeeze that one extra card in that they really want or really like. So there you go. Anyway, right, I'm done. Stick a fork in me. Thank you for listening to my verbalage for a while and all those numbers and whatever else. But hopefully I've managed to convey my thoughts on the matter for you. So we'll see if I do any more shortly. I might try and do a few BT Tactics cards. I was very unhappy with some of the decisions made in the FAQ. Very happy with 1 or 2 of them, but some of them I just thought are absolutely ridiculous. So I may end up with another stroke rant session saying what the hell is going on with some of these things and I don't know and don't understand and whatever else. And hopefully I'm going to try and put a positive spin on a few things as well, instead of trying to be Mr. Negative all the time. So anyway, catch you soon, look after yourselves, take care, it's a big bad world out there.